this incredible technology is an opportunity to democratize access, right, for all children, not just children who have resources, but those students who are black and brown who are coming from inner cities. This headset itself is $300, and through the state of Florida, we're able to fund anybody who's a resident of the state of Florida completely tuition free, including the headset. So they don't have to even pay for the headset. And you think about the promise of a world class education, right? Augustine says the world is a novel. If you stay in one place, you've only read one chapter.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Jimen Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of I Have Something to Say, and I'm very excited to share some information that might not be available to the masses yet. But it's really how education is technology is transforming education, because we know that the education system's kind of broken, and the pandemic really helped us understand that. But what are we doing to fix it? Well, here we have Adam Mangana. He's the Chief Innovation Officer and co-founder of Optima Ed. And it turns out he's like one of the OGs in the ed tech space that's been doing the work to create solutions to the broken system of education. So Adam, welcome. And you've been in this forever. Your entire career has been poured into finding solutions in the education space. And thank you for joining us today.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here with you, Sammy. I appreciate your time, and this is just a tremendous podcast and a great opportunity to share our story with your audience.
I'm really excited because we were introduced by Navas, who works on our team. We just started dabbling into, ed tech and using Web 3.0 or metaverse for business purposes in the last year. So I'm like the newbie in the group, and to have a seasoned, you're like a veteran, right? In 3D worlds and in tech, to have this conversation to me is a gift, because I learn every time. Every time you and I bump into each other or talk or share space, I come out blown away and just learning so much. And it's really remarkable. And I really applaud you for what you've co-founded and created with Optima Ed. It's really a virtual reality educational platform, one of a kind, right? That provides an education experience, not so much learning environment. It's really an immersive platform that really offers students access and equitable access to online learning opportunities, grades. Is it K through 9 already,
That's right.
or
That's right. We're already K through 9. Yep.
K through 9? And I mean, people, you need to experience it to really understand the depth of what Adam and his team have been doing for God knows how long. And I want to get into that, right, from the very beginning. But we're going to attempt, right, to really fully describe, what these learning experiences are. And so talk to me first a little bit, Adam, about your foundations, right? I mean, I know that your passion and that you've been in education from the get, that you dove right in and really prepared yourselves, right, with the skills that you needed to really take a deep dive into education. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started my career in inner city Miami. I was in a program called Teach for America, and I had a background in computer science. And so, even though I thought I was going to end up teaching 12th grade government, once school people found out I could program, I became the computer science teacher, coding coach. This is in the era where Scratch was really beginning to scale, MIT Scratch. And so, we were doing a lot of, programs in the K-12 space, just teaching kids how to program. And what I discovered was that, traditional scripting, even, blueprinting and kind of block coding was inaccessible to so many students, primarily
Mhm.
because it wasn't particularly engaging. And about 9 years ago, I had a really good friend of mine who, was working at North Carolina State and had a connection to Epic Games, and I ended up getting a cookbook for the game engine, Unreal Engine, and built a course teaching students how to develop VR applications through using this game engine. And the programming language at the time was C++, so we targeted um, high school students because of course that's a more complex language to program in, and it was a hit because we could combine students who had an interest in programming with students who had interests in particle effects and sound effects and other elements of design, 3D modeling, Maya, Blender, that kind of thing. And so many more students participated, and I was like, we're on to something. And I felt
Mm.
like I, I I could see that just within my little small sample size of a school that this had legs and that the era of spatial computing and immersive computing was inevitable. And so I was then curious who's really studying this, who's doing the longitudinal studies on this. So I ended up doing graduate work at Vanderbilt, where I did my master's degree, and my whole capstone project was in studying this. And at that time, we were literature reviews. The only university that really had any longitudinal studies was Stanford, and so we're
Mhm.
looking at the efficacy of VR classrooms. And the secret sauce really is in the concept-based instruction and the opportunity to perspective take. So, when VR was introduced to the world, many folks' first experience was in, doing some kind of, roller coaster. And that's not really a helpful use case because 30% of the population gets motion sickness. And because VR so naturally replicates reality, about
Yeah.
30% people who we were putting in VR headsets were getting motion sickness, and that was like a deal breaker for many folks. A much more compelling use case is teaching abstract concepts in a far more concrete fashion. And students are learning things twice as fast, retaining things twice as long. I'm reminded of a quote from St. Augustine. He says, "The words printed here are concepts. We must go through the experiences." And so the opportunity for students to experience learning is a profound opportunity to engage students, and that opportunity really leads to better outcomes for student learning.
That's great. And I love how the research didn't exist. And you're like, okay, so then let's just
I'll be
do
part of
it.
it.
Yes, exactly. And so that's why in the introduction, it was just for me so important to um say that, right? How you were like you're like creating the foundations for what's coming. And now with the pandemic, I mean, what was the because so then when did you found co-found Optima Ed, and why, and what were those first few modules that you were creating, like, right? Like what,
Oh,
yeah,
tremendous,
like
tremendous
the
question.
planning, like, okay, where do you even start with something that doesn't exist, right? At this magnitude.
Yeah. So I had been building virtual reality labs, and I mentioned previously my work had been, before the pandemic, really looking at the efficacy of VR learning in the context of VR labs. But these labs had a lot of friction. They were expensive. You needed to tether a $600 headset to a $3,000 computer. And so you
Mhm.
have these kind of $4,000, 3,600 to $4,000 setups per user. And what ends up happening from a kind of product evolution perspective is at the time of the pandemic, the Quest One, which is now a headset that can be, you know, um, operated untethered, so you're not having to connect that headset to a computer, it's processing its own polygons. It's able to have standalone experiences. And so the pandemic hits. At the time, I am actually running a school. I'm the head of a school in rural Mississippi, and we had built a VR lab there. And so my idea was when the world pivots to Zoom, I
Mm-hmm.
would mail VR headsets home and essentially have students in a social VR experience together as an alternative to Zoom. And my rationale was twofold. One, I knew it was a far more engaging experience. And so I watched so many schools just lose engagement with families for an entire semester. Uh,
Yes.
and I thought we got to solve the engagement issue. And then I found Zoom to be a very lonely experience. It was engineered as a conference call, and so I was trying to solve the loneliness problem in online education. Simultaneously, my co-founder was looking to launch a statewide online program in Florida, and
Mm.
she reached out to a former professor of mine at Vanderbilt to try to recruit him to do this. And he says, I'm not the guy. This is one of my professors at Vanderbilt. He says, I'm not the guy, but I have a guy. And so I meet my co-founder, Erica Donalds, who has been, an advocate and an educational entrepreneur in her own right in Florida. And we, come together. And after a very short period of time, we are, incorporated as Optima Ed and sprinting to building the world's first VR school. Now, in order to do that, we had to do a 900-page application with the state of Florida,
Wow.
um, curriculum approved, so that it could be funded tuition free. And in order to do that, we had to raise some capital and begin to actually take what I had started to build in Mississippi and formalize it and incorporate a lot more learning science and subject matter experts. And so, we began to scale up and build academic content and then get that content approved through the state of Florida. And we're very fortunate to be the only virtual instruction provider, one of 10 approved in the state of Florida, but the only one that's delivering content for the era of spatial computing. So immersive, virtual reality based academic content.
And it's incredible. It really is. Okay, so this is the part, people, where we're going to attempt to, to describe the experience. I went through it through the demo, and it was in a very busy conference. And Adam and Alyssa were like, you need to come and experience it for yourself. I put on the headset, and what followed in the next 15 minutes was just jaw dropping. It was amazing. And then there was a line, and they were like, okay, you're done. And I'm like, no, but I don't want to. But I don't want to. But wait, what? Wait, what? That I have to stop taking this lesson, with my teacher at the time. And she was amazing too. And so, okay, so you have over 4,000 modules already created. I'm going
Yeah.
to explain what I understand, right, from what I've learned from you
Yep.
in the past, 6 months since we know each other. Okay, so they have over 4,000 modules. Okay, some of them are in person, like in real time. There's a teacher that comes into the room and could teach, a group of students that are walking around in Pompeii, or they're walking around, with in the 13 colonies, or they're working, whatever the topic is, right? Or it could be in a science lab, whatever it is, and it's across all disciplines, or it could be a self-paced module. But these 3D immersive spaces are graphically rich. They resemble real spaces. Okay, and they're highly interactive. So far I got it right.
Oh
Is
my
that
goodness, that was we had to get a contract to you, Sammy, because that was you sold it better than I could ever. I again I was a classics major, and so I'm reminded of Augustine again when we talk about education. He says the world is a novel. If you stay in one place, you've only read one chapter, right? And so this incredible technology is an opportunity to democratize access, right? For all children, not just children who have resources, but those students who are black and brown who are coming from inner cities. This headset itself is $300, and through the state of Florida, we're able to fund anybody who's a resident of the state of Florida completely tuition free, including the headset. So they don't have to even pay for the headset. And you think about the promise of a world class education, right? Augustine says the world is a novel. If you stay in one place, you've only read one chapter. And so, this idea that we can allow children to experience the world from the comfort of their home is a revolutionary concept. And it started in the origins I mentioned earlier in the podcast. My good friend Dr. Derek Ham, who is a friend and mentor and the chair of the design school at North Carolina State, built an experience called I Am a Man, which puts people back into 1968 Memphis from the perspective of the sanitation workers. And so this idea of body transfer, where you can walk a mile in another person's avatar, is an incredibly compelling way to conduct teaching empathy, right? The idea of empathizing and learning perspectives. And I think in the era of spatial computing, what will be more valuable is the ability to learn skills and perspectives and do that in a very content rich way. And I think this medium allows for that content richness and that uh, more clear ability to perspective take, right? Learn from other people's perspectives, and the
Yeah.
idea that we can teach empathy.
That is amazing. You see, that's something new that I learned. I mean, I can explain what it is that you do, but now this is a whole new layer because I wasn't aware that part of the curriculum incorporates you stepping into the shoes of an avatar that represents a historical figure, or maybe just from the perspective of people that lived in those environments, in those historical contexts, right? And so you can under better understand differences even from class, socioeconomic, right, status, from I mean, I think this is really really a whole entire, new take on how teaching is implemented.
And I think the other thing that's exciting is the intersection within these technologies. A lot of people see virtual reality and I think of it very linearly. But in the
Mhm.
era of spatial computing, where the internet is moving into three dimensions, you
Mhm.
are also going to see the power of AI and blockchain intersecting in this technology to create these very individualized experiences, transformational experiences. So it's an exciting time. We're very humbled to be part of the vanguard of this technology, but more importantly, my children go to school this way from a farm, and for me it was an opportunity to give them access to world class teachers, right? Alexander does not become great without Aristotle coming into his home and tutoring him. And so to be able to give children access to tremendous teachers, because to your point, your teacher that day, you were in Orlando, your teacher was in Atlanta, to be able to have an arbitrage where the very best teachers will go into geographies digitally that they wouldn't go into in real life can be
Right.
transformational for educational access. And that's the core of our mission at Optima Ed. It's about educational access and choice. We want we don't see this as a zero sum game between brick and mortar schools and virtual schools. We just see this as a new pathway for families that have agency, regardless of what their income might be, regardless of what their socioeconomic status or backgrounds might be in any demographic measure. But to be able to give them access to a transformational education seems to me to be the most natural next step.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's about thinking also of the future of work and business, right? And so it's just to make sure that children, again, across the board, right, with no barriers or limitations, are able to gain easy access to becoming future ready. And it because it's something that really worries me a lot, right? But when you were telling me, about how it's now part of, the state of Florida's education department, in the sense where any child across the state can get easy, like free access to it, and the tools, right, to be able to jump on and experience learning, not just be taught, right, but just experience the learning. I think it's really a powerful thing. And I got to tell you, when I sat down on that chair and within 5 minutes was able to put on the headset and learn how to move inside the space, and within minutes I was jumping into learning about the human heart. I was able to pick up a 3D rendition of a heart in my hands and then look at it pumping. I was just blown away. I was able to, and then that my teacher says, okay, now, you can turn it around and make it huge. And I was able to make it huge and look inside of it. It was just mind blowing and so realistic, that it really was exhilarating. I can't even explain, all of the feelings. And then the curiosity too, right? It piqued my curiosity even further than when I was growing up and was opening up the Britannica encyclopedia that my parents bought. It had all the pretty pictures and stuff, and that piqued my curiosity. But this was next level. This was next level. I mean, what kind of reactions do you get? I mean, I know I can pretty much figure out what the kids say, but what about parents? What kind of reactions do they get? Because I'm sure they're curious and jump on to see what the hell this is, right?
Yeah, as you can imagine, the students are very easy because this is a natural extension of their learning, and so much of we hear the term digital native, but for many students, this is an intuitive technology.
Mm,
For parents, right, one of the biggest things that we've noticed is that um, they are either driven by the flexibility and the individualism, or they
mm,
are driven by the opportunity for this technology to create and solve the kind of social issue that traditional online education has been creating. So the fact that students can be together and experience this kind of common courtesy of connection that you can experience that you just don't experience on Zoom, right? The
yeah,
sense of presence that solves the kind of engagement and loneliness issue that online education has traditionally been plagued with. That's a big deal for parents. Parents
yeah,
don't want to compromise the ability for their child to socialize, even if they really want a different kind of school delivery mechanism. They want more flexibility. Why do people educate their children from home? Well, one, they decide that the current model isn't working. They
mm,
need more individualization. They are prioritizing safety or comfort, or just they realize that at the end of the day, um, once when a child turns 18, they've already spent 95% of the time they're going to spend with their child, and they want
yeah,
every out. And so we're giving people the gift of time in this delivery mechanism. That's really the value proposition. And I think that's what will draw the use cases for immersive computing first is efficiencies. But over time, I think what will happen in the era of spatial computing is you'll see more distributed ownership. And so, just like we had real estate booms, right, in the early 1800s in the United States, um, as access to real estate became more democratized, you're now going to see the same kind of booms taking place in the era of spatial computing, where people can own their own data. And
mm.
as a learner owns their own data, there's going to be a really interesting shift to how parents manage the ownership of their children's data.
Wow. Wow. And even their education. So this is an offering for them to pretty much control the learning environment of their children, and how that's wow. So it's a tool, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Mostly.
think about it, Sammy. When we built the current education system, we were
Yeah.
doing this in one. one main reason was to democratize immigrants. We had factories we needed to fill. We needed an efficient working system. You mentioned the future of work. We
Yeah.
those factories just aren't coming back in the same sense. They're going to be powered by robots and artificial intelligence if they do come back, and not powered by humans. And so, as we think about the future, we want a future where folks have more time and more opportunities to be with other people in community, and more times to be creative. And I think this educational model really lends itself to the kind of flexibility without compromising the social interaction that we find in
Yeah.
in and other online delivery mechanisms. So
Yes.
if our starting place is how do you build the best online school, we feel like we've taken some pretty good steps towards that goal.
Oh, I think it's incredible. Yeah. And so, what are it's beyond, like I said before, it's next level 3D immersive experience. And I could totally see, why you've grown so quickly. How many students now do you have using
Yeah, so
Optima Ed Academy?
we have in Optima Academy Online, we have 400 students, up from 170 in year one, and then we have another 600 or so students that are accessing our field trips. And then, we are also taking the content that you mentioned, the modules, the access to the library, and we're distributing that to schools all over the country and world. And so in total, we're touching, with Optima Ed's content today, we're touching about 14,000 students, 400 of which are actually students in our school of record, Optima Academy Online.
That's great. And I know we've gotten into like special opportunities too, or special conditions like hospitals, children's hospitals. I know that you were running a pilot. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, you're
Yeah.
always looking to intervene and
Yeah.
solve problems. It's like, okay, we solved this. Now, who else could benefit from this, right? And so then
So
talk to me about that.
that's such a powerful point. I think, a lot of folks in the technology space, are looking for a short sales cycle, or they're charlatans. They're not rooted in real problem solving. And I think this is the thing that our company motto is esse quam videre, which in Latin means to be rather than to seem. And that is rooted in really wanting to optimize the use case of this technology. And there's no better use case in my mind than what we're doing with Stanford Children's Hospital right now. And if you were to Google, the story on Stanford Children's Hospital, we have powered their VR curriculum for the students who are in the children's hospital, and we've also trained their teachers. And so students who are bedridden and unable to move are able to be in community with other students, and that's just a transformational use case, because you know these are kids who you know just would not even be able to access online if they were holding a tablet and trying to be on Zoom. This just doesn't work at all for their use case. And so to be maybe immobile but be able to move around in the metaverse is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity.
Wow, that is just incredible, really. And so, what are the plans? Where do you see, Optima Ed going, the academy, other offerings? Like what is your vision for the next, I want to say 5 to 10 years in terms of expanding, right?
Yeah, yeah,
This of the availability and ease of access to
yep,
this.
yeah. One of the biggest things is we want to keep it tuition free, and so um, in Florida, we have now what we call universal ESAs. This are educational savings accounts. And you're seeing this trend expanding beyond Florida to really a number of other states, where the funding for public education is no longer tethered to a zip code or geography or what we call millage rates. Well, the way we've funded education in this country has been through real estate taxes. So if you live in a more expensive zip code, you have more funding for school, and that
Mhm.
fundamentally makes sense when you really sit back and think about it. It's
Right.
essentially the rich getting richer, and so we see this mission of access playing out in tandem with the educational savings accounts, where truly it doesn't matter where you live, you can have access to a world class education. So um, we think that our growth path will continue along with the government policies around expanding educational access. So ESAs is a big opportunity for us. You're in Florida, Sammy, and Orlando. We want to continue to grow in the state of Florida. I'm constantly reminding my team, nail it before we scale it. We really see Florida as a tremendous state for educational innovation and leadership, and Florida has been a really good partner with us to date. And so we see ourselves expanding to probably 1,000 students next year, which is exciting for us in terms of that growth rate. More than doubling every year is a pathway to, I think, real impact. And I think we'll see some exponential growth over the next 3 to 5 years as as headsets become more ubiquitous.
Uh-huh.
But I think the biggest thing that people aren't paying attention to that will shift the way that people consume education are these policy shifts around educational access and decoupling one zip code from what they have access to. And so I think the thing that's most exciting, Sammy, is the states that are really committed to allowing the dollars to follow the student and really allowing the families to put that ownership in the family's hands on curating the very best educational experiences possible. And so we think we're moving from an era of standardization to individualization. And I think our company is set up really well to meet the demands of that new era.
I'm so excited to see you continue to grow and to impact the education system and how we learn and teach and commune with one another too, right? And I thank you. Yeah, I'm just excited to have a front seat,
Oh
and
my
see
God.
and to know you. I'm like, oh my God, to see Adam and his team and all their greatness just push forward and figure out, right, best ways to implement, right, these technologies, I think is just fantastic. And I want to thank you on
Oh my
behalf of
goodness.
all the students and all the parents, right? Because it's really a daunting task to figure out, right, how these things work. And to know that we have you in our midst is really a gift and a blessing. Thank you, Adam.
Oh my goodness, Sammy, thank you. And I would encourage all your listeners, don't take my word for it. Go check us out at www.optimaacademy.online. And for those who are residents of Florida, completely tuition free. We are working diligently to get it approved in other states so we can provide this for others. But we do have a tuition option for those who live outside of Florida. So anybody who's interested in learning more can check us out there. And we're excited to be part of the mission and the movement towards empowering learners.
Thank you so much, Adam. Have a great rest of the week.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Sammy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Jimen Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU.